Making mistakes in Italian is totally normal. It's part of the learning process. There's nothing to stress about. In fact, they're actually super helpful because they show you the areas that you need to work on. The trick is to spot them, fix them, and use what you've learned to speak more confidently and naturally. Now, this lesson is designed to help you catch those tricky grammar slip-ups before they become bad habits. Each sentence that you're about to see might include a small mistake or two, and your mission is to do an Italian grammar check to spot the error and learn how to avoid it next time. And don't worry about taking notes, I've done all the hard work for you. To help you to practice everything you're about to learn here today, make sure you download your free PDF cheat sheet, which includes all the examples and vocabulary that you're about to see. Just click on the link in the description box below this video. Pronti? Iniziamo! Let's get started! Let's jump into this Italian grammar check. Can you spot the mistakes in Italian? You're about to see 15 sentences. See if you can spot anything that doesn't seem quite right. The first sentence is:
Abito in Milano, ma vado spesso a Francia per lavoro.
Now, while it's clear what the speaker means, there are two mistakes with the prepositions. Have you spotted them yet? Now, these little words can be tricky because they don't always match the ones that we use in English, and they can change depending on the context, just like we see here with in and a. Now, when we talk about being in a city or town in Italian, we need to use a, not in. So instead of saying
Abito in Milano,
it should be
abito a Milano.
On the other hand, when we talk about going to a place, we usually use in, except for towns or small places, which take a. So instead of saying
Vado spesso a Francia,
the correct form would be
vado spesso in Francia.
Here is the correct sentence.
Abito a Milano, ma vado spesso in Francia per lavoro.
I live in Milan, but I often go to France for work. Now, to learn more about how and when to use all prepositions in Italian, don't miss my video lesson right here. Let's take a look at the next sentence. Do you see anything amiss?
Accompagno il mio fratello a casa e arrivo.
Now, the problem here is in the use of the definite article il, the, before
Mio fratello.
My brother. In Italian, we don't usually put the definite article before a possessive adjective when it's referring to a singular family member. So instead of saying
Il mio fratello.
we simply say
Mio fratello.
Now, this rule applies to most family members in the singular form, such as
Mia madre.
my mother,
Mio padre.
my father,
Mia sorella.
my sister, and so on. However, when the noun of the family member is paired with an adjective, such as
Il mio bellissimo fratello.
my handsome brother, or is used in a diminutive form,
Il mio fratellino.
my little brother, the definite article becomes necessary. So the final correct sentence is
Accompagno mio fratello a casa e arrivo.
which literally means I take my brother home and I arrive. In other words, I'll take my brother home first and then I'll come to you. Are you enjoying this lesson? Don't let the learning stop here. Make sure you download your free PDF cheat sheet. Just click on the link in the description below this video. Now let's take a look at the next sentence. Anything amiss?
Anche se ho studiato molto, dubito che riesca a superare l'esame.
Did you spot it? Now in this sentence, there's a mistake in the use of the subjunctive mood. Now while it's true that the verb
Dubitare.
to doubt usually triggers the subjunctive because it expresses uncertainty, there's a special rule when the subject of both the main clause and the dependent clause is the same, as in this case, where the subject is io, I. When this happens, the construction of the subordinate clause changes from che plus the subjunctive to di plus the infinitive. So instead of saying,
dubito che riesca,
the correct form is,
dubito di riuscire.
which means the final correct version of this sentence would be,
Anche se ho studiato molto, dubito di riuscire a superare l'esame.
although I studied a lot, I doubt I will pass the exam. Now, to learn how and when to use the subjunctive correctly in Italian, make sure you watch my video lesson right here. Now, the next phrase is,
Sandro vuole tornare a casa. Lui manca la sua famiglia.
now the mistake here is related to the verb
Mancare.
to miss, which works a bit differently in Italian than in English. In English, we might say that someone misses something, but in Italian, the construction is the opposite. The subject of the sentence is actually the person or thing being missed, not the person who feels the absence. So it's like saying that something is missing to someone. In this case, instead of saying,
Lui manca la sua famiglia.
we should say,
Gli manca la sua famiglia.
where gli is the indirect object pronoun for to him. So it literally means his family is missing to him. Therefore, the correct sentence should be,
Sandro vuole tornare a casa. Gli manca la sua famiglia.
Sandro wants to go home. He misses his family. Now, to learn how to use the verb mancare correctly to say things like I miss, make sure you watch my video lesson up here. Now take a look at the next sentence and see if you notice anything amiss.
Ieri ho andato al centro commerciale e ho comprato una rossa sciarpa.
Now, after doing an Italian grammar check, we can see that there are two mistakes in this sentence. First, in Italian, we don't use the auxiliary verb
Avere,
to have with motion verbs like
andare,
to go. Instead, we use
essere.
to be. So the correct form of the passato prossimo is
Sono andato.
not.
Ho andato.
The second mistake has to do with the placement of the adjective,
Rossa,
meaning red, before the noun
sciarpa.
scarf. In Italian, adjectives that describe colours usually come after the noun they describe, which is the opposite of English, where adjectives usually come before the noun. So instead of saying,
Una rossa sciarpa.
we should say,
Una sciarpa rossa.
so the final correct version of this sentence should be,
Ieri sono andato al centro commerciale e ho comprato una sciarpa rossa.
yesterday I went to the mall and bought a red scarf. Now, to learn more about how and when to use the passato prossimo in Italian, make sure you watch my video lesson right here. The next sentence we're going to do an Italian grammar check on is,
Io amo la carne, mentre lui piace il pesce.
now the mistake here comes from the use of the verb
Piacere.
to like. In Italian, piacere doesn't work the same way as to like does in English. Instead of saying that someone likes something, Italian flips the structure. The subject becomes the thing that is liked, and the person who likes it is expressed with an indirect object pronoun, or the preposition a plus the name or noun. So instead of saying,
Lui piace il pesce.
he likes fish, the correct form is,
A lui piace il pesce.
literally, the fish is pleasing to him. I know it sounds strange, but just go with it. So the final correct sentence would be,
Io amo la carne, mentre a lui piace il pesce.
I love meat while he likes fish. Are you enjoying this lesson? Don't let the learning stop here. Make sure you download your free PDF cheat sheet, which you'll find a link to in the description below this video. Now let's take a look at the next sentence. What do you see that doesn't look quite right?
Da piccolo sono andato spesso al mare con i nonni.
In this sentence, the mistake lies in the use of the passato prossimo instead of the imperfecto. The passato prossimo is used for actions that occurred at a specific, well-defined moment in the past, usually once. On the other hand, the imperfect is used for actions that happened regularly or habitually in the past, especially when describing actions that were part of a routine, as in this case, where going to the sea with your grandparents was something that occurred repeatedly. So, instead of saying,
Da piccolo sono andato spesso.
we actually need to say,
Da piccolo andavo spesso.
to convey that this was a regular, habitual action. So the final correct sentence should be,
Da piccolo andavo spesso al mare con I nonni.
as a child, I used to go to the sea often with my grandparents. Now, to learn more about how and when to use the imperfect in Italian, make sure you watch my video lesson right here. Let's move on to the next sentence, which is,
Professore, gli posso parlare un attimo?
now the mistake here is with the choice of the pronoun. In Italian, when we want to be formal, such as when addressing a teacher, boss, or stranger, we need to use the formal subject pronoun lei with a capital L and its corresponding pronouns, the direct object, la, her, and indirect object, le, meaning to her, whether the person we're speaking to is a man or a woman. Now, this may feel strange when talking to a man because lei and its related pronouns are technically in the third person feminine, but that's simply how formal Italian works. So instead of saying,
Gli posso parlare.
we should say,
Le posso parlare.
which means the final correct version of this sentence should be,
Professore, le posso parlare un attimo?
now if you want to learn more about formal speech in Italian, make sure you watch my video lesson right here. The next sentence we're going to look at is,
Se avrei più soldi, farei la vita bella.
oof, my ears hurt. Now this sentence contains one of the worst grammar mistakes in Italian, using the conditional when we should use the subjunctive. Specifically, in this time of if clause, we're imagining a hypothetical situation that may or may not happen. We need the imperfect subjunctive in the first part of the sentence, not the conditional. So, instead of saying,
Se avrei.
if I would have, we should say,
Se avessi.
if I had. There's also a small issue with
Vita bella.
beautiful life. In Italian, certain fixed expressions always place the adjective before the noun, and
Bella vita.
beautiful life is one of them. So the final correct version of this sentence should be,
Se avessi più soldi, farei la bella vita.
if I had more money, I would live the good life. To learn more about how and when to use the conditional in Italian, make sure you watch my video lesson right here. The next sentence we're going to look at is,
Non so perché, ma io ammalo sempre durante le vacanze.
now after doing a proper Italian grammar check, did you notice something missing here? A pronoun. In Italian,
Ammalarsi.
is a reflexive verb, which means the subject is both performing and experiencing the action. Now, this might not be immediately obvious because in English, we simply say to get sick. But in Italian, we need to use a reflexive pronoun to show that the subject is also the receiver of the action. So instead of saying,
Io ammalo.
I get sick, the correct form is,
Mi ammalo.
where me is the reflexive pronoun for myself. So the final correct version of this sentence is,
Non so perché, ma mi ammalo sempre durante le vacanze.
I don't know why, but I always get sick during the holidays. The next sentence we're going to do an Italian grammar check on is,
Tuo papà e tua mamma sono simpatiche veramente.
What do you notice? Now this sentence contains a couple of important mistakes. First, the adjective,
simpatiche,
nice, doesn't agree correctly with the nouns it refers to. In Italian, when an adjective refers to two nouns of different genders, like
papà,
father, which is masculine, and
mamma,
mum, which is feminine, it must take the masculine plural form. So instead of simpatiche, feminine plural, the correct form here is
simpatici,
masculine plural. The second issue concerns the position of the adverb
veramente,
to mean really. In Italian, when an adverb modifies an adjective, it must be placed before the adjective. So instead of saying
simpatici veramente,
really nice, the correct word order is
veramente simpatici.
So the final correct version of this sentence should be
Tuo papà e tua mamma sono veramente simpatici.
your dad and mum are really nice. Let's take a look at the next sentence. Do you spot anything amiss?
I Queen scriverono canzoni indimenticabili. Simone mi dà sempre consigli su quali ascoltare.
Now there are two things that we need to adjust in this sentence. First, let's talk about the verb.
Scriverono,
It's almost there, but not quite right.
scrivere,
To write is an irregular verb, meaning it doesn't follow the typical conjugation rules for ERE verbs in the passato remoto. The correct third person plural form in this tense is actually
scrissero,
next. Let's look at the verb.
dà,
Did you see the issue here? It's missing an accent. In Italian, the verb
dare,
to gives requires the accent on the third person singular present form
dà.
to distinguish it from the preposition da, meaning from. Without the accent, it can cause some serious confusion, which means the final correct sentence should read
I Queen scrissero canzoni indimenticabili. Simone mi dà sempre consigli su quali ascoltare.
Queen wrote unforgettable songs. Simone always gives me advice on which ones to listen to. Are you enjoying this lesson? Don't let the learning stop here. Make sure you download your free PDF cheat sheet for this lesson, which you'll find a link to in the description below this video. Now let's take a look at the next sentence. What do you see that's not quite right?
Avete visto il nuovo ragazzo di Paola? Ha proprio dei belli occhi.
You see that
Belli,
that doesn't look quite right. That's because the adjective,
bello,
meaning beautiful or nice, has some special rules when it comes before a noun. Its ending changes depending on the gender and number and the first letter of the word it describes. For example, when bello comes before a masculine plural noun, it starts with a vowel, like
occhi,
eyes. It changes to
begli,
so instead of,
dei belli occhi,
the correct form is,
dei begli occhi.
so the final correct sentence should be,
Hai visto il nuovo ragazzo di Paola? Ha proprio dei begli occhi.
have you seen Paola's new boyfriend? He really has beautiful eyes. The next sentence we're going to look at and do a grammar check on is,
Stiamo stanche. Quanto tempo mettiamo ad arrivare a casa?
what mistakes did you notice here? Well, in Italian, we don't use stare when talking about feeling exhausted or tired. For conditions like tiredness, we use the verb essere instead. So instead of saying,
Stiamo stanche.
we should say,
Siamo stanche.
it's easy to get confused with these two verbs, as both can translate to be, but they're not always interchangeable, which makes them one of the most common mistakes to make in Italian. Now let's look at this section.
Quanto tempo mettiamo ad arrivare a casa?
Now here, there's an issue with the verb mettere. It's missing the pronoun ci. Now, in Italian, when talking about how long it takes to do something, we need to use the pronominal verb
metterci,
meaning to take time. Pronominal verbs are those where a basic verb combines with one or more pronouns that change its meaning. For example, the verb mettere on its own means to put, but when combined with the pronoun ci, it changes its meaning to take time. So in this phrase, instead of saying
quanto tempo mettiamo,
the correct form is
quanto tempo ci mettiamo.
Which means the final correct version of this sentence should be
Siamo stanche. Quanto tempo ci mettiamo ad arrivare a casa?
We are tired. How long does it take us to get home? Now let's take a look at the next sentence. What mistakes do you notice?
Ciao bella, ti sono piaciuti i crisantemi?
Well, grammatically, there's nothing wrong with this sentence. The indirect object pronoun ti, to you, is in the right position, and the past participle
Piaciuti,
liked matches perfectly with
crisantemi.
chrysanthemums. But take a closer look, because even when grammar is on point, there are some cultural nuances to keep in mind. First, let's talk about
Ciao bella.
hello, beautiful. Now, while it's a super popular Italian greeting, it can sometimes be perceived as flirtatious, especially if coming from a man. So context is key. If you're chatting with a close friend, it's perfectly fine. But in a more formal or unfamiliar situations, you might want to skip it and go with something more neutral. Now, about those
Crisantemi.
chrysanthemums. In Italy, these flowers are strongly associated with cemeteries, where they are traditionally used to decorate tombs. So giving them to a friend, partner, or anyone outside this context could lead to some awkward moments. Now, to continue your learning and to help you practice, make sure you download your free PDF cheat sheet with this lesson, which you'll find a link to in the description below this video. If you enjoyed this lesson, then you'll love Intrepid Italian, my series of online self-paced video courses that break down everything you need to know about Italian using my unique 80-20 method. More details in the description below. And if you enjoyed this lesson, don't miss my lesson on how to use all 15 tenses in Italian, which you can watch right here. Plus, if you want to master Italian word order and sentence structure, watch this video lesson right here. In the meantime, hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and turn on those notifications so you get an alert when I post more videos like this one. Until next time, un abbraccio. Ciao!